Hey, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Fast Tracks Live. My name is Paul Abernathy. I am the host for tonight's show. And thanks for joining me on all of the social media platforms out there, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, LinkedIn, X, or formerly Twitter. Appreciate you all joining me tonight for this special episode where we're going to look at the process that's going to take place for the 2029 edition of the National Electrical Code. Now, before I even get started in that, I have to address a couple things. First, there's a lot of people out there that say, why are we worrying about the 2029 NEC right now? I mean, we're sitting here February 8th, 2024. That's quite a ways away. Why are we even worried about it? Well, there's a couple reasons for that, and we're going to go in that tonight's episode. I'm going to actually present a letter that is from NFPA that is basically kind of a white paper, and I'm going to read it, so it is going to be a bit tedious for those that have never seen it before. And we're going to be looking at the vision of what NFPA believes the next full structure of the NEC should be. Now, for those that say again, why are we worrying about this now? Why aren't we waiting? Okay, there's a real important reason for that. I just got back from the first draft meeting. Okay, we just finished the first draft. We haven't voted on any balloted items yet, but it's the first draft meeting in Charleston, South Carolina. It was a great meeting attended by all of the code making panel members, NFPA, and Jeff Sargent. It was really well attended, and it was great to see everybody again after we'd all been kind of shut down due to COVID. The last cycle, all the stuff we did was all remote. So again, it was great to get back into the flow and sit down to business to help create a much better, easier to understand National Electrical Code, thanks to everybody's input that is submitted. So during that meeting, and I have to say you up front, when I heard that we were going to be changing the structure many months ago, I was extremely skeptical. I was like, why change the code? It's been working fine for decades. I've gotten to the point where I just can rattle off different articles, different sections, subdivisions, different parts, different tables, rattle everything off. Why in the world would you want to change that now? Well, I started to change my opinion on that, right? And ended up going to the meetings in South Carolina. And I was able to sit in, I had my questions, and I was able to sit in on the presentation for each code panel by a member of the correlating committee. And what they did was to present to us kind of why we're going to be making this change. Why does NFPA pushing? Because I'm going to be honest with you. When I first saw this, my impression of this was somebody's trying to fulfill their legacy and just do a radical change. But that is due to my ignorance. That is due to my inability to take what I was doing currently and have the foresight to see where it's going for the next generation. Technological changes, things that you take for granted, because as you're going to see in this presentation, there's been quite a bit of change that's taken place to the NEC, and it's pretty much become a filing cabinet where we just kind of throw things in, but it has no rhyme or reason. So with all that said, we're going to look at the vision that NFPA has, but the reason that we're doing this, and I wanted to point this out before we got started, is the 2029, when the 2029 is here, all the work really, as far as the structure, will have already been done. So right now, we're working on the 2026 edition of the National Electrical Code. NFPA is soliciting comments, suggestions, and I will tell you right now, bar none, of all of the standards development organizations that I've been involved in, whether it's the International Code Councils, NFPA, ASTMs, ULs. And I'm going to tell you right now, without a doubt, whether you believe it or not, the fairest body to work and get code changes and get structure of standards change is the NFPA process, without a doubt. And I've been involved back when I worked with NEMA, worked with other different organizations. By far, the integrity that NFPA has really does guide their message. And last week, there was nothing but professionals. Sergeant, as always, is the consummate professional. All of the staff were amazing. And so anyway, I listened to what the correlating committee had to say. A gentleman named Alan Manchi was one of the presenters in one of our panels. And I listened to what he had to say, and it started to make sense to me. And then I went back and read the white paper that was put out by NFPA a second time. And I read it because now I wanted to read it through the eyes of somebody who said, okay, I heard people talk from a correlating committee, but now I need to go back and see how this all jives and whether or not I'm fully on board with this. Okay, I get it. Learning new structures, all that kind of stuff is, people are going to be like, oh, this is all new to learn. Hey, it is all part of life, but there is a reason, there is a method to the madness. So what we want to do is, look, and I do want to give some shout outs, while I'm here looking out. If you tell me, shout out where you're from, I'd love to shout back out at you. Daniel from Chicago, thanks for joining me, Daniel. Daryl, thanks for joining me, Daryl. Appreciate you here. It's one of those things where we're definitely going to look and try to get an understanding of where this is going. And again, why are we doing it now? Because right now is when they're soliciting comments for it. Because by the time the 2026 edition comes out, okay, it's going to have a structure published in that document that says what it's going to be like in the next 2029 edition. Okay, so we have to do the work now. NFPA is soliciting it now. We can't kick this can down the road. We have to give comments. We have to give information, insight right now. And again, I'm going to look at it all, but you got to bear with me as I get through this opening monologue here, is that the code has not structurally changed in the full structure of the code since 1937. Not in my lifetime, not in your lifetime, okay? It has not changed. Sure, there's been things added, code articles moved, new ones dropped in the bucket, but it really hasn't had a fundamental structure change, okay? So this is something that we can be involved in, you can be involved in. We can come together in common ground and come up with suggestions and recommendations to get to NFPA. And I'm hoping that you think of some that you can send me tonight. You can always send them to my email address at support, SUPPORT, at fasttracksystem.com, or you can leave them in the comments. I'll try to capture them. And again, we want to be positive. There's no sense in being negative here because this ship has left the port. Now you have to be involved to change it, okay? So we got a couple other shout outs out here. Let's want to make sure we get these out of the way before I get deep into the presentation. WireNut 90 from New Jersey, thanks for joining me. Anthony, thanks for joining me down in Florida. Okay, DA, Oklahoma, Oakland, California, thanks for joining me. Okay, James Durham down in the Florida Keys, thank you for joining me. Daryl, again, Daryl from Rowlett, Texas, right down the road here. And let's see here, we got Adam French. Thanks, Adam, from Portland, Oregon. The normal crowd we got here is normal. Okay. Hoffman Estates, Illinois, Dante. Thanks for joining, Dante. Let's see what we got here. A bunch in the crowd here. Angel, thanks for joining me from Philadelphia. I was just in Philly not a while back for the NECA event. It's great times. Stephen, welcome back, Stephen. Probably familiar with Stephen from his TikTok channel. Likes to do all kinds of weird experiments that we hope doesn't end in his demise. Just teasing you, Stephen. Let's see, what do we got here? We've got Chris from Kalamazoo, Michigan. All right, we got a bunch of people in here, and I'm sure I'll get to many more of you. Let's go on and get into tonight's. There's Rich from Rich Arvada, Colorado. There you go. Okay, let's go on and get into this letter first, folks. I want to read this letter because we need to see what the thought is of NFPA. What are we doing this for? Why are we making a change, and why do we have to do it right now? The reason is we have to do it while we're paralleling the 2026 so that at the end of that document, we have the guidelines, the matrix for what's going to happen. Think about this, folks. The public input stages for the 2026 is gone. The next public input stage that we'll have to do, and it'll get here quicker than you think, is going to be on the 2029. It doesn't matter whether you're on the 2023, you're on the 2017, or the 2020. This is different than making public inputs. This is a structural change that you can be involved in. Now, for us to do submit public inputs, the next time that we do it will be based on the new structure. So all of that is why we're trying to get it fixed right now and get what we want it to be like. How many times have you griped about the code, the structure, you don't like how it's laid out? This is your opportunity, okay? All right, so let's go. All right, folks, you got any comments? Feel free to put them in the chat. I'll see them and I'll try to elaborate on them, but we're going to kind of read this out for those of you who have never seen this document before. You can see who it's from. It's from NFPA, and it is a document. It's a white paper, and it says, keeping the NEC relevant is now the time to modernize. Now, I'm going to have to tell you, as a patent holder of products that have the 0 to 10 volts, as well as the power all-in-one cable assembly, again, for automation and control, there's about 6 patents that I own on that type of product. That's a product that has been in the code, been allowed to do it in the code, but some of its applications are starting to evolve for certain type of control applications that can kind of push us into gray areas because the code's not covering it. So we have to expand to meet that. But let's kind of look at the vision here of NFPA. It says the National Electrical Code, the NEC, is the foundation of the electrical installation regulatory infrastructure for the United States, Mexico, and numerous other jurisdictions around the world. Did you know that? Growing demand for safe, reliable, resilient, and efficient use of electrical power to support society and the economy is aligned with technological advancements of power generation sources, electrical distribution, and new electrical power loads. It is critical the NEC be revised and implemented by the electrical community every 3 years to support the accelerated pace of change and technological advancement. Always something new coming along. Think about it. We have fault managed power systems now. We have, they're class 4 fault managed. We've got a lot of wireless technology that's coming in, electronic infrastructure, controlling equipment that kind of creates areas in the code where you're like, well, where do we put this? Where do we put this new technology? Okay, we're having a lot more expansion of medium voltage. Where do we put it? Do we just keep expanding on the old medium voltage that was from years ago, or do we change things up and make it a more logical flow? Okay, well, let's keep going here. It says, the structure of the NEC plays a critical role for personnel in learning, understanding, applying, and enforcing the requirements established within the regulatory code. While the current structure, the one that we have today, first introduced in 1937, folks, we have not had a significant major structural change to our code in yours or my lifetime. Okay? Now, has provided tremendous success and stability and continues to be used by engineers, contractors, electricians, and training programs, much like we do here at Electrical Code Academy. Okay? The ability to efficiently learn and quickly apply and inspect advanced technologies and uniquely configured electrical systems is a challenge for all electrical professionals every day. Electricians call me all the time. Inspectors call me all the time. They're seeing systems, they're seeing things that manufacturers are introducing that really don't fit nicely within the code, but they're getting installed. and they don't know what to do with them. And when we decide to do something, somebody submits a public input, we get it in the code, then we struggle. Where do you put it? Does it fit in here? Does it fit here? Well, you're going to see something interesting in a little bit. You're going to see all of the progress that the code has made since 37. And it's going to be quite astonishing to see how that growth is. And then you're going to start wondering, maybe we did just kind of dump stuff where we needed and we thought it would work. Now, it's been effective. We have very safe installations today. Amazing inspectors, amazing electricians, amazing engineers, all utilize this book every day. Okay? So we are evolving. Now, the existing NEC structure needs modernization to continue to support the advanced electrical infrastructure, configurations, and technological advancements. Therefore, it is imperative that the electrical industry actively, that's why we're doing this now, folks. This is why we had meetings and why we had presentations by the coordinating committee. NFPA believes it has to happen now. It says, the industry actively pursue a revived NEC organizational structure to support ease of learning, understanding, and applying the NEC safety provisions in a rapidly advancing new energy landscape. Now, here's some industry trends. What is happening? Okay, historically, the NEC was written based on the serving utility providing electricity to the premises with conductors, overcurrent devices, and loads. Pretty simple, right? Utility brings it, transformer, service drops, service laterals, brings it to the building, electrical equipment, metering, brings it in. You have loads throughout the structure. That's pretty easy, right? Well, back when we were dealing with in the 50s and 60s and 70s, pretty straightforward, right? It's just power consumption. Well, internet, things that smart things today that interact and talk and communicate and control things remotely from thousands of miles away are having to interact with what I call dumb equipment that is now becoming smart equipment. And so our code has to catch up with that. And we have to structure it so that it's a logical flow for electricians, engineers, designers to be able to get where they need to be rather than jumping from here to there. Okay? I mean, think about it. Energy systems today, we have what's called special uses or special occupancies or special locations. All these things that are special that are not so special today. They're commonplace. So why do we call them special anything? In fact, some of those wiring methods that were special are now becoming not so special. They're becoming commonplace. So we're not looked at. The thing that I had to grasp, folks, this is what I had to grasp with this. We're not changing the technical aspect of the code. This is not a technical change. You're still going to submit public input. This is a structural change. Think of it like this. Chapter 3 is a massive chapter. It covers general requirements, but then it also goes into wiring methods, depth of covers. Then it goes into each type of wiring method. Wouldn't it make sense to pull out the important stuff and move it in certain applications, right? As Steven said, cannabis facilities uses a major amount of power consumption, but a lot of these new cannabis facilities are now using class 4 fault managed systems to control the lighting. An amazing advancement in technology. And we really struggle with where it goes. Sure, we created an article and just dumped it in there for those class 4 fault managed systems. We just dumped it in there because we didn't know what to do with it. Okay, that's just an example. And so if you look at what the NFPA said here, it makes so much sense. While this theme was held true for majority of the NEC's lifespan, technical changes over the past 2 decades have challenged this theme. New and evolving technologies, along with novel concepts, have been force-fit, placed in locations in the existing structure that probably wasn't the place it needed to be, but we had nowhere else to put it. And so when you're designing something or you're the electrician and you're dealing with one of those unique new aspects that get dumped into the code, how do you know to get there? right? And then once you're there, how do you know what other articles go with it? Everybody's been struggling over that. How do these different articles intertwine together? When you're doing this, you do that. I mean, if we're dealing with motors, we got motors, but then you got overcurrent protection in 240. Then you've got to deal with the conductors in 210 for branch circuits. Then you got, how do we meld this together and make it a better structure? All those type of things. Well, let's go a little deeper here. Communication systems in Chapter 8 are no longer installed and maintained by communication utilities anymore. Now, premises, large buildings, big Tesla plants, Google facilities, Amazon facilities, they're handling their own communication internally. It's no longer something that the communication industry is just handling, like AT&Ts and T-Mobiles and stuff. You have large companies now that have their own internal communication utility systems inside of their own building. We have no way to deal with that. The code wasn't designed for that. We don't just want to dump that in Chapter 8. What about electrical systems that are over 1,000 volts? Now, as a normal electrician every day of the week, you're probably familiar with just 600 volts or below, or 1,000 volts or less. Maybe you don't deal that much with over 1,000 volt applications. Well, we just created new articles in order to be able to try to get over 1,000 volts branch circuits, over 1,000 volt feeders, okay? What about 1,500 volt DC that people never were talking about years ago? But now everybody's, all of a sudden, there's been this reinsurgence of DC. Not just the EV vehicles, okay? That's the low-hanging fruit, okay? 625's been around, but that's the low-hanging fruit. But now we have systems that are bidirectional. How does the code deal with that? When a lot of these systems now, these battery systems, interact with existing premises. There's more to do with that than just to sit there and take it and just dump it where we think it was going to go in the normal structure. No, it's a much bigger industry. Like Elwood says, ESS, okay? These systems have people that spend their entire career doing nothing but that. And right now, it's kind of embedded in locations, energy storage systems. Yes, it's kind of stuck in a location where maybe that's not the best fit for it. Look at this one here, limited energy systems. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 are commonplace. They're no longer considered special anymore. These limited energy systems are pretty much used, and you know what? Many of these systems today look just like, act just like a Chapter 3 wiring method, okay? Well, they're not adequate to be up in Chapter 7, Chapter 8. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why didn't we just leave the structure the way it is and just move things around? Because we're literally just dropping stuff in places that's in a structure that dates all the way back to 1937. It's time to change. DC systems and advanced electrical storage technologies, just like what Elwood was saying, are increasing in use. Energy monitoring systems, control and automation are accelerating energy resilience, such as microgrids expansion, becoming a great alternative. Of course, we have microgrids in the code, but as that technology changes, we have to broaden it out rather than bury it. Those type of scenarios, it's ever expanding. The point here is that a new structure gives us the opportunity. And we're going to look at a sample of the new structure here in a minute. It gives us the opportunity to see where things can fit nicely within a multi-chapter structure that is not confined within 8, okay? Again, medium voltage changes, rapidly changing in medium voltage. This document, I will try to make this document available in the notes of this. When I update the notes here, I will try to upload it and I will make it available so that you can download this document, okay? So, and then of course that limited energy, like we said, and again, I won't go over all these, but I will tell you limited energy, it's the installation of communication system is no longer limited to traditional telephone and cable utilities. Telecom utilities have been replaced with the term service provider, and the installing contractor can be anyone now, not just an AT&T, not just a telecommunication company, right? So we have to remember that a lot of the stuff they do is outside of the scope of the NEC, but more and more of this stuff is becoming under the scope of the NEC. So do you want to just keep dropping it in the basket that's an antiquated system from all the way back in 1937? It's all about the usability of the code. We do believe it. The NEC is not an installation manual. Okay, it's not for the untrained professional. However, we can go a long way in trying to make it a little more usable for us, the professional. Okay, a little easier to maneuver. Okay, now multi-directional power flow, like we said, you've probably already heard about that with a lot of the EV vehicles. Multi-directional type of flow from the vehicle into the structure, back to the vehicle. All that type of technology is expanding rapidly. Again, you're seeing the massive push for EV vehicles. If that's the case, you're going to have a lot of these rolling power plants, if you will, that are going to interact with structures, and that technology is going to expand. Now, here's the future vision, okay? Now, I won't say anything about the digital delivery because everybody's probably familiar with Link. I'm going to tell you, when it came to Link, when they first told me they weren't going to do PDFs anymore, I was a little upset. I love my PDFs. However, when they came out with Link, I knew that once I got it and I subscribed to it, they don't give me that, guys. I serve on code panels, but nobody gives me Link. I subscribe, hands down the best. I love Link. I love it. And I'm glad they went away with the PDFs, okay? Plus, PDFs aren't very secure. And again, people that write content like myself always hate PDFs because people steal them and copy them and do all that stuff anyway. So it all made sense anyway. So the technology of Link brings it. I've got every code book at my fingertips with Link. So that was one of their moves. Now, future vision. How did this all take place? In March of 22, the NEC Coordinating Committee formed a structure task group to review the current NEC structure to see if changes are warranted. Okay. While initial discussions were favorable that changes are necessary, the Coordinating Committee is soliciting feedback. This is why we're having this talk tonight, before I show you some structure here. Feedback from stakeholders, you and me, to make sure the common vision is shared in order to provide the best possible document as we move forward in the future. Trust me, NFPA is transparent. Okay. They want your input. Okay. So the scope of this activity is focused on structure and organization of the NEC to provide the necessary framework for the technical committees to make technical changes. As such, any changes will only involve structure and not affect the technical content. That is not what this is about, technical content. We do that like we normally do every 3 years. Now, I won't read this statement here. This just talks about path forward. We need to modernize this NEC, okay? We need to. So with that said, I think it's important for us to kind of look at a presentation and get an understanding of where we're going with this, okay? And I'm going to show you some slides. These slides come directly from NFPA. Now, I'm going to tell you up front, I am not an expert at what's going on with NFPA in this process. I am just sharing with you what I know and give you a heads up on what it's going to look like, okay? So want to make sure I get that out front. All right, so folks, if you remember how we did business back in 1972, many of you may not remember. I was a young dude back in 1972, and everybody knew what Sears was. Everybody got that Sears catalog, right? 2 of every 3 Americans shopped in the last 3 months. They would say in 1987 they shopped at Sears. Okay? Well, what happened to Sears? As technology changed, everything went rapidly online. Amazon came to be. Everybody wanted things instantly, quick. Sears ended up going under. Okay? Spin it forward to 2017 when you got Amazon. 2 of 3 Americans shopped in the last 3 months shopped at Amazon. Okay? Interesting. The Goliath of the day, Sears, is 1% of the GDP. And Amazon in 2017 is 1% of the GDP, right? Times change, technology changes. If you don't get ahead of it, then you're going to have a document that's antiquated, okay? Now, again, on the right, it's just showing link and the ability to get everything at your fingertips, okay? So here's what we've done for years, folks. You have 8 chapters. When we present something, we try to find which bucket that it can go in. And it might not be perfect. It might not fit right in somewhere, but we're going to find a way to stick it in there, okay? So we say, okay, special condition. Anything that we can come up with, let's just stick it in that bucket if it's remotely something to do with special condition, whatever that may be, okay? Somebody just did that. And remember, this structure has evolved all the way back from 1937, right? Special equipment, which is probably not so special anymore. Commonplace equipment. Special occupancies. What's so special about them? Okay? Think about it that way. Now, this is an interesting slide. Okay? Introduction, Article 90 started in 1959. In 37, you had Chapter 1. 37, you had Chapter 2. Right? And then you had Chapter 4. And 4 started out with 10 articles in it. Okay? In 1937, it had 10 articles. In 2023, there are now 22 articles that are crammed in Chapter 4. Did they all fit right there nice and neatly? Did we just jam them in there? Okay? What about Chapter 5? Well, Chapter 5 had 5 articles in 1937. In the most recent code, 2023, there are 27 articles. Do you think that everything fit nice and neatly inside of Chapter 5? Or do we just dump it in there? What about Chapter 6? It had 7 articles in 1937. Today, it has 27 articles in there. We just kept filling the bucket. And that makes it difficult for people to use the code because we label a chapter as a certain thing, and then we have certain things that are inside of it, and we have to think that it correlates, it's something special. That type of scenario, right? Well, what about Chapter 7? It had 4 articles in 1937. It has 15 articles today. And in Chapter 8 started out in 1937 as 2 articles, and it now has 6 articles. Now think about this. Under Chapter 8 in communications, all of the stuff that you see interacting, internet, technology, things like that, they're going to start coming into the fold. What's going to happen to Chapter 8? What's going to happen to Chapter 7? It's going to blow up. But is that the right place for these things? So, significant. This is important. From 1937 to 2023, the current edition, that's 35 editions. This is the growth of just dumping certain things into different buckets. Okay? So, what's coming down the pike? Okay? We have new technological advancements. We've got different associated grid structures. We got PV systems. We got large-scale PV systems that are coming down the pike. Okay, where do we go? Remain relevant with the quickly evolving electrical industry. We need to improve usability. We need to place content in the NEC where it actually makes sense. We need to use logic and create these structures. For example, systems below 1,000 volts. We have systems that are over 1,000 volts. We have limited energy. We have medium voltage. We need to eliminate special equipment and special conditions because today they're not so special. They're just run-of-the-mill. They're everyday systems. We need to leverage the past to make the future even better. And we need to work together. And this is where you come in as stakeholders. We need to create a structure that actually looks to the future. And we're not just filling the gaps. Now, this was a document I just read. So, keeping the NEC relevant now to the in the time of modernization. We're looking at current trends, technology that are changing. Like I said, you've got this class 4 fault managed systems that are going to, in my opinion, change the way we do things. It is dramatically going to change. It's more, believe it or not, it's more Tesla-like, the way the visionaries that created these systems. But all of our major manufacturers, Schneider, okay, Eaton, Siemens, GE, okay, Southwire, Encore Wire, okay, Zero. All of these major manufacturers are going to come up with products that are going to be pushing the envelope. Where do you put them? Do they fit nicely in the bucket? Probably not. So you've got industry trends that are changing, a lot of interactive communication stuff, building management systems. Medium voltage is expanding. It's not just utilities anymore, folks. Medium voltage now is growing rapidly in large infrastructure projects, okay, where they do have medium voltage levels that the normal electrician may not have been used to working with, but now they're going to be seeing more and more of it. And so where it was kind of it was in there, but we kind of just looked the other way at it, kind of gave you some information. Now it's expanding rapidly. Limited energy, multi-directional power flow, digital delivery of content, future vision, path forward. And this is where you're able to give feedback. And I want to help be that conduit for the feedback. Okay. So thinking about this, more difficulty for AHJs to inspect things like medium voltage. I'm going to tell you how many times that I have inspectors call me and they're not sure how to inspect and do their job when it comes to medium voltage applications. So medium voltage is expanding. Less likely to have listed equipment since traditionally geared towards utility. So a lot of the medium voltage now, that's not going to be utility driven. It's going to be premise driven. Large companies, big Tesla giga plants are going to be dealing with their own medium voltage. We need information in the NEC for that is not utility owned, okay? So more likely to have requirements that are antiquated. Depth of knowledge of technical committees can be a challenge. So now that we open this up, we create more professionals to come on board and be part of the code making panels that have additional insight and knowledge on many of these things. Okay. Wiring methods in Chapter 3 for over 1,000 volt systems are difficult to determine. With renewable energy in microgrid lines of distinction between the National Electrical Safety Code and the NEC are blurred. Okay, whether or not you're dealing with a PV system or renewable energy, how it interacts with the utility folks, all of that stuff. Again, the line of demarcation for some of that stuff can be confusing, right? So we're going to address that. When it comes to limited energy, in the past, it's confusing. You don't have the normal telecoms anymore. We don't have just the AT&Ts that are doing it and the T-Mobiles. Now we have companies that are installing limited energy systems that are not just communication, things like telecoms would do, okay? Or telephone providers. It's expanding. Independent Chapter 8 versus Independence Chapters 1 through 7. Cat 5.6 cables, Article 725 and 805. Power over Ethernet in Article 725 and 840. And how will we maintain the relevance as these technologies evolve? Well, the future. If a new structure is set up right, structured, and break these things out, then we have improved usability, improved terminology. We create structure that is technologically agnostic. We have eliminated redundancy. We have parallel structure, and we have everything communicates. And it's no more confusion for not just the installer, not just the designer, but not just the inspector. We create these lines that are no longer blurred if you do the structuring properly. Short-term goals, okay? So people want to know, what are we doing now to set up for 2029? What's being done now? All right, well, in 2026, as you folks know, we already met, and some of this process, the NFPA has already started doing some of this stuff. For the medium voltage and limited energy, they moved the medium voltage structure to medium voltage technical changes. and they work on the limited energy. So those code panels are working on that. Okay. Create parallel structure for limited energy, make it look like the front of the book. So instead of taking the areas in the back in like chapter 7 and have it fragmented, let's start making it look like the normal structure of the code that you would see in like chapters 1 through 4, right? Kind of normalize it rather than have it be some albatross back in chapter 7 or something like that, right? Normalize it so you don't feel like, ooh, what are those special things? Begin implementation. Move certain articles for long-term roadmap implementation. Means that some things in the 2026 are going to be moving around to facilitate its alignment with the new roadmap for what's going to come out in 2029. Okay, so all of this is already being done behind the scenes. And what we're soliciting from you folks is when you look at the structure I'm going to show you, think of ways that you think that you can make it better. Okay. So let's look at this real quick, and this may be hard for folks to see. So in the 2023, here's your structure, right? So you have introduction, and then as you all know, we have chapters 1 through 4, which apply generally to all installations, right? We're all familiar with this, 90.3. And then you have special occupancies, special equipment, and special conditions. So that's 5, 6, and 7. Those are supplemental, or they amend anything between chapters 1 and chapter 7, okay? And then you had chapter 8 standalone. And then you had a chapter 9, which was nothing but tables. And then, of course, you have some informative annexes A through K. So this is the structure you're used to right here. Now, look over here. This is the new structure format, and you'll see what chapters are going to be now the general that apply generally, and you're going to see what kind of supplements and what kind of amends things. So look at here. So you have chapters 1 through 14, and you see how this is being broken down. And we'll look at I'll show you the different code sections that are being proposed, so bear with me here. All of these now are going to be part of the general requirements. Check it out. Definitions, general requirements. You're going to have a chapter 2, which is wiring and protection for systems 1,000 volts AC or 1,500 volts DC and below. You have chapter 3, wiring and protection of systems over. So you notice that they're being pushed together now. You're going to have chapter 2 is going to be for 1,000 volts AC or 1,500 DC and down. And then you're going to have chapter 3, which is going to be wire and protection for systems over 1,000 volts AC or 1,500 volt DC and up. So it makes sense because now you're going to know where to go. If you're dealing with wiring and protection and it's 1,000 volts or less, you're going to go into chapter 2. Okay. Next, we're going to deal with what? Chapter 4, wiring and protection for limited energy systems. So all those emerging limited energy systems, okay? We're not talking about things like the 120s, and that's the normal systems. These limited energy systems are now going to all be adequately placed in a chapter that has no bounds. We're able to put everything in there that evolves with limited energy. And anything that's outside of the scope of limited energy, it's going to be based on whether it's 1,000 volts AC or down or over 1,000 volts within its chapter structure. Next, you got wiring methods and materials. Check this out. Chapter 5 through chapter 10. And I'm going to show you what it looks like here in a minute, so please bear with me. I'm giving you the overview here. And then that is your general. Then you move into the supplementary or add, where you amend or supplement the general requirements. Down here, you've got special locations and occupations because some things are special. They're very unique locations, okay? All right. Or you have specific occupancies like a hazardous location, right? Okay, well, they're going to stay here. They're going to be in chapters 15 through 17. So one thing you're seeing, folks, just because we're getting more chapters, it's not going to change anything as far as how you use the NEC, except instead of trying to cram everything in a chapter, we're going to create more specific chapters that are geared to specific topics. And it should be easier for you to maneuver. So we have energy sources. We have chapter 18. And then we have life safety and emergency systems in chapter 19. We have all of the tables in 20. And then we'll have our normal informative annexes. So how's this going to shake out? How's this going to shake out? Well, let's look at this real quick. Let's see if I can, it'll let me blow this up a little bit. That's probably as good as I'm going to get it, folks. Okay. So let's kind of look how this blows up. So here's your introduction. Here you can see what it's going to be, what it is in the 2020, right? And here you get to see what it is as far as the structure here, this code panels. Now, I wouldn't worry so much about the code panels. I know a lot of code panel folks are nervous about that. You'll still have the index, JDM. You're still going to have an index. They would definitely never get rid of the index. Okay. So, but currently, if you get link, you don't have an index anyway. Probably one of my biggest gripes of that NFPA is for educators like us who have to teach people to pass exams, that one of the things is, why don't you give us the index and link? I know you have a search feature, but us that teach it, that use link, that promote NFPA, that promote this stuff, why wouldn't you give us the index so that we can continue to use it while we teach people? I'm just saying. All right, anyway, so let's look at it here. So here over here is what it is right now, okay? Or what it is right here in 2023, okay? Right here. And over here is what it's proposed to be on the left. So introduction, this it is right now, but this is where you can get involved, folks. Article 90 is still going to be introduction. Now look at chapter 1, how it's going to be restructured. The definitions are still 100. Easy peasy, right? Requirements for electrical installation, that's going to still be 110 currently. Subject to change, but this is what it's going to be. Load calculations. We're going to move the load calculations up under chapter 1 because arguably load calculations are extremely important to make sure that we hit them right away when we're doing design, building, structural design for the loading of a building, branch circuit loading, all this stuff. So we're going to move it up here, and that instead of being 220, it's just going to be 120 because it's in chapter 1. Energy management systems used to be 750 or is 750 in 2023. We're going to move it to 130. Temporary installations were all the way in the back of the book in 590 are now going to be 140. Still there. We're not losing technical. It's all still there. It's just a new structure. Now, let's look at chapter 2. Chapter 2, you had general requirements, okay, for wiring and protection of 1,000 volts or less. Was in 300. It's going to be 200 now. Y'all all know that 200 was grounded conductors. Well, it's going to move. So 200 will be general requirements. 310, which is conductors, will now be 205. Use and identification of the grounded conductor, which used to be 200, will now be 206. Branch circuits will not change. Feeders will not change, right now anyway. 225, outside branch circuits and feeders are not changing. Services is not changing. Overcurrent protection is not proposed to change. Over voltage is not changing. And grounding and bonding is not changing. Okay? Makes sense? All right, chapter 3. This is for over 1,000 volts. Now notice how we're going to take all those things that were over 1,000 volts that are spread out through the NEC, and we're going to kind of bring them together here in one chapter. And we have new ones that have been proposed in the 2026 that are going to be aligned with the new structure that's going to take place in the 2029. So look at it right here. So General requirements, these are over 1,000 volts. It's going to be 305. And now it's going to be 300 in the 2029. That's the proposed. What is 315 is going to be 305 for the conductors and cables for over. Use and identification of grounded conductors in 205. Now notice what you notice here. This was in chapter 3. This was in chapter 2. Everything was kind of all over the place. See how they're trying to align this stuff? Trust me. I was skeptical until I sat down. And again, I'm not the expert on this. I'm just being the messenger tonight. Okay. I'm sure I have my haters out there that hate what I do, and I get it. But I believe we all come together on this because we all can have some input here. And look what they're trying to do. Bring all these things that were maybe fragmented and try to bring it into logical flow. Yes, the numbers are changing, but you'll get used to it. You got that code book. You know we don't expect you to memorize everything. It's going to be harder for people like me who like to go to these events and quote code off the top of our head and make everybody go, ooh, he knows everything about the code. I need this book just like you every day. I got to go in and validate something and look at it. So in my mind, structure is just structure. I was resistant, but I'm not anymore. Now look at here. Look at here. Branch circuits. Yes, folks, over 1,000 volt AC branch circuits. Feeders from 235, it's going to be 315. For outside branch circuits and feeders, it's going to be 325. Services, which 235 in the this is going to be in the 2023, okay, is now going to be 330. Over voltage protection, which was in 242, for the over 1,000 volts is going to be 342 now. And grounding and bonding, right? Grounding and bonding, instead of having it intermingle with what you and I are used to doing for normal grounding and bonding, why not move those things in 350 and put it with the over 1,000 volt? Makes sense. Instead of it being in a part, like part 10 of 250, let's give it its own article within chapter 3. That way, everything in here is nice and nifty for these over 1,000 volts, so that when we have something else we need to add that's over 1,000 volts, systems for wiring and protection, it goes right here. It's no longer just a piecemeal. It has a place. Now, I'm not naive enough to say that this is not going to expand, but once you set the foundation down and now you have laid it out properly, then it's going to be much easier to put things where it needs to be. Look at chapter 4. This one is for wiring and protection. This is for wiring and protection of limited energy systems. Check this out. You got 400, which is going to be now new for wiring requirements and materials. You had limited energy that was in 722 for conductors and cables, right? Are now going to be in 405, all under chapter 4, instead of being in 722. Then you had use and identification of conductors. Notice it didn't exist here. That's going to make it easier, break things out in 406. All right, interior cabling systems. Okay, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, all of those that were under 724, 725, 726 are now going to be grouped by part under 430. Now, the first thing that somebody will say is, I love dealing with motors, so I'm going to have a heck of a time remembering that 430 is no longer motors. I get it. But I'll adapt, you'll adapt, we'll all adapt, and it's not a big deal. Now, same thing right here, exterior cabling systems, outside plant. You're going to have a part structure, and this is going to deal with, okay, remember, this is limited energy systems, communication circuits, antenna systems, CATV. It's going to be dealing with network powered, premise powered, all those things that are getting relocated from other areas of the code into where it logically needs to be. I don't need to have some scattered up there in chapter 8. I don't need to have some scattered in chapter 7. I am putting them where they logically need to be now. Now, what about overcurrent protection for those class 1 through 4 type systems? Well, that's going to be 440. instead of being scattered within 724, 725, and 726. Let's bring them together in one article. What about overvoltage protection for these types of systems? Okay, create a 442 for that. And then guess what? These systems have their own unique bonding requirements that are going to make their way into this so that I don't have to go jumping into 250 and other areas to get confused. Okay? It's going to list the information here. It's going to be a more logical flow because if you're working with limited energy systems, I want to make sure that I'm within the chapter, that I work within that chapter. All right, look at 5. Enclosures and wiring support structures. So this is the one that I originally was skeptical about because they were going to call wireways, they were going to call cable trays raceways. And I was like, whoa. They are never been raceways. They're a supporting system. But I want to give you an example that NFPA listens. This was one of the ones that I submitted to NEMA, and I'm sure other manufacturers did too. We said, you can't do it that way. You need to look at it differently. And they listened and they changed it. They will listen to you folks. You're the experts out there. You work with your hands every day. So here, enclosures and wiring support structures. Cabinets, cutout boxes, meter socket enclosures was 312, now going to be 500. All you hazardous location folks are going to freak out. Okay. How about 314? Well, now it's all nice and nifty under Chapter 5. It is going to be outlets, devices, pull boxes, junction boxes. Again, granted, they were all under Chapter 3 anyway, but if part of the structuring, now it just kind of brings everything together and it allows for expansion here. Okay, we only have 500, 502, 504, 506, 508, 510, 512. There's plenty of room for growth here within this chapter. So it's just a structural move. Remember, nobody's trying to create things to get around you or get stuff in the code or make technical changes. All they're doing is moving things around to what they feel is a logical flow. Okay. Cable trays. It's a supporting component. Okay. Wireways, non-metallic wireways, non-metallic extensions. All of these are going to be restructured into Chapter 5. Well, let's look at Chapter 6. Now, check this out. Most of these were under Chapter 3. Then, of course, you had optical fiber, which is up there in 700s, right? And then, of course, you had flexible cords that were in 400. Then, of course, you had flexible fixture wire that was in 402, right? So all of that is now going to fall under Chapter 6. And it's going to be a nice flow. Now, I can tell you right now, it's going to take me a little bit remembering Article 612 versus remembering 334 for non-metallic sheath cable. I get it. I'm okay with it. I will remember 612. Okay? And for you out there that work with it every day, does it really matter? Right? It's really going to be harder for inspectors. It's really going to be harder for educators than it is you, right? Because when you go to the code book, you're just going to go to the code book and look it up, right? But now you can feel confident if it's something to do with wiring cable, I can go right to Chapter 6 and focus on that, right? So anyway, renumbering of all of these in here, okay, to fit with the structure. Here's Chapter 7. Now notice something unique here, Chapter 7. Circular raceways, conduits, and tubings. So here is all of your circular raceways, okay? And again, restructuring all of these and giving them 700 through 724. But notice this one, raceways for limited energy systems. Instead of having to work in 300, Chapter 3, right? Instead of having to redo that, Chapter 3, now if you've got something to do with limited energy raceways or communication raceways, I don't have to go all the way and worry about Chapter 8 anymore. That might seem like that's not a big deal, but for somebody who does electrical work and then all of a sudden have to dabble in the communication systems, they might have never worked up in Chapter 8. It can be confusing. Let's bring it together. I give kudos to the correlating committee for putting up this initial structure. But I want to remind you, even though that ship has left the dock, we're going with a new structure. This is all subject to recommendations, suggestions that you can make. So I will make these documents available to you. Give me a little bit once the thing is over, and I will do my best in the descriptions of my YouTube channel. I will try to give you. Now, if you're on my Facebook or other, probably not going to have it, but I will here. But I'm also going to be doing a blog on my website, which is fasttracksystem.com. And I will link these things on that blog. So that'll just be another place you can go get this if you want a copy of it to read it yourself and get familiar with it. Oh, and by the way, a copy of this, when it's done, will be in the 2026 NEC. It will be in there. That's why we're doing this now, because we have to make sure that not only are we working on the changes for 2026, but we're also working on the structure so that they all can be together so that all of you can put your eyes on it when you get your 2026. Now, I know what you're thinking. I won't be on the 2026 or even the 2029 until I retire. Look, this is why if you do anything in your career, this is an opportunity for you to be involved and support the structural change, because you're probably not going to see this happen again in your lifetime. Okay? And if you've got something to say about the structure, forever hold your peace. This is your opportunity. And I'm going to give you how you can do it at the end, how you can get in touch and how you can solicit and send comments. Okay. So anyway, there's your circular, but check this out. Non-circular raceways. So we're breaking the circular raceways, right? And which are going to cover conduits and tubings. And we're going to get into non-circular, like cellular concrete floor raceways, cellular metal floor raceways, strut type channel raceways, surface metal raceways, surface non-metallic raceways, underfloor raceways. So here, these were all at 300. Now think about this. Think about it. All of these types of raceways were lumped together in one chapter. Now look at it. You've got a chapter 8 that's going to be dealing with non-circular. You got a chapter 7 that's dealing with circular, right? And now you've got the things that were enclosures and support structures like wireways and gutters and all that was always intermingled in the different wiring methods. Now that's pulled out. So you definitively know where to go. You don't have to go to chapter 3 and fumble through it. Now you go, oh, well, it's only what? There's only 12, basically about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 articles in 500 now. So if I've got one of these wireways, boom, chapter 5. I don't have to worry about thumbing through chapter 3. So again, speed, ability to get to things quickly, logical flow, all that was being thought of here. Breaking up chapter 3 into 3 different chapters made sense. It makes sense to me. And I work with this stuff every day, and it made sense to me. All right, what about this? Power and lighting systems, busways, cable buses, right? Multi-outlet assemblies, low power suspended ceiling power distribution systems. All of these were also jammed in chapter 3, okay? All of these were jammed in chapter 3, except for manufactured wiring system and office furnishings. Now they're going to be under power and lighting systems, chapter 9, okay? So look at here. There was 600 in here. There's 300 in here. 300. Chapter 3 was huge. It's now broken down logically. All right, open wiring systems for all of you that love to work with knob and tube. Okay, still out there. So here it's under chapter 10, 1000, 1002, and 1004. Okay, messenger supported wiring was 396. Let's move that out of the chapter 3 type of wiring. Let's give it its own thing. That way it's very distinct. Okay, right there. Not very big. Won't be very long, I'm sure, but now it's there. Check this out, folks. Devices. Remember what we have now? We have 404 for switches. We have what? We have chapter 4 is a certain way, but now we got devices, and it's going to be 404. And here's where more people are going to struggle. 404 is going to be 1100. Wiring devices is going to be 1102. Switchboards, switchgear, and panel boards, which is 408, is going to be 1104. Industrial control panels, which is 409, is going to be 1106. This is only logical because we're adding more chapters because we had to break up chapter 3. Okay. You're going to have to get used to it. 450 is now going to be 1108. Okay. Now, utilization equipment. So here is where one is going to be pulling together stuff in the code that was all over the place. So if I have certain utilization equipment like electric welder, okay, I don't run to chapter 6, okay, in 630, okay, but then the next minute I'm dealing with motors, which falls under utilization equipment. Then that is 430. Now they're all going to be not spread out in chapter 4, not spread out in chapter 6. They all are an element of utilization equipment of their own nature, own style, motors, cranes, things like that. But they're all going to be put logically here. So luminaires, lamp holders was 410. It's going to be 1200. Low voltage lighting was 411. It's going to be 1202. And as you can go down the list, there's my beloved motors right there. Okay, 430. Well, it's now going to be 1206. That's all right. I'll remember that. 1206 motors. Appliances was in chapter 4. Now it's here all together in one chapter that I can go to, and I have everything in here. Okay. So I think they did a very good job of doing that. Now let's go on to chapter 13, systems, equipment. All right, so this is electrical vehicle power transfer systems. That was EVs. That was 625. Now it's 1300. Electrified truck parking was 626. That's now 1302. I think you can see the point. Trying to bring, now these were all in chapter 6 before, but another thing you have to remember when you look at this, notice that some of these went up the high as 685, and now our structure is going from 13, 1302, 1304, 1306, 1308, 10, 12, 14. It's now created room for expansion, new technology, things to fit nicely into these chapters. And that's one of the intents here, is to create these nice areas to facilitate expansion. And I have to say, the correlating committee group under the guidance of NFPA, I think they did a great job. From a skeptical standpoint of thinking, damn, I got to learn all these new numbers again. At the end of the day, my only hope is that what doesn't change is the subdivisions and the sections. You get me? So I give you an example. So we're motors. Y'all all familiar with the motors. So short circuit and ground fault protection is 430.52. I am hoping NFPA, because I really hadn't got the definitive answer on this, I am hoping if there's somebody from the correlating committee out there watching this, I sure hope that it becomes 1206.52. And I hope we don't go down the path of the style manual or like the ICC codes where it's like 1206.6.5.3.2.5. God, then I'm not on board. I'm not on board. If that's how they do it, I'm not on board. But if all we're doing is moving the articles around for expansion and leaving the sections the way they are, then this is a great move. And you need to make sure that in your comment or suggestions that you say that. Don't mess with the sections. Don't mess with the subdivisions. Don't mess with the part structure. If all you're doing is changing the numbers up front to facilitate the expanded structure, leave everything else intact. Because if you go to the method like ICC does, International Residential Codes do, or even how the Manual of Style does for NFPA, if you go that direction, you're going to lose support. That is not the way to go. And I have not heard them say they're going to do that. So I'm just speculating. They would never do that. Okay. It doesn't make sense why you would do that. Because then it's going to be ripe for error everywhere because you're not going to catch everything. If all they have to do is change these numbers, then I think we can achieve it without too much heartburn. Okay. All right. So there's your systems. And then, okay. So equipment. So here's your equipment. And then here's your equipment. It's over 1,000 volts. So this is for switchgear and industrial control assemblies. Again, pull them out of chapter 4. Give them their own standalone so that if you're dealing with equipment that's over 1,000 volts, you go right to chapter 4. You don't have to question it. So if you're dealing with boilers, you're dealing with motors, for example, that are over 1,000 volt, which used to get embedded in 430, it's not there anymore. Let's pull it out. Let's pull it out and put it where it needs to be, motors. And so you don't go forging through 430. If you know you got a motor that's over 1,000 volts AC or 1,500 volt DC, you're going to go right to chapter 14. Those are subtle things that should make your navigation of the NEC much easier to navigate. So here's chapter 15. Take a gander at it. The good news here, here's some good news for those that deal in hazardous locations. It looks like they just added a 1 on everything for the most part, and they're pretty much keeping the structure intact, right? So 500 is now 1,500, okay? So that'll be easy for you to remember, right? If I'm thinking about type 1 locations, class 1 division locations, used to be 501, now it's just 1501. So I'm thinking about class 2 locations, used to be 502, now it's 1502. So at least this one stayed structurally pretty similar, okay? And you'll notice that the code panels didn't lose their control. They still didn't change, so they don't have to worry. Now here's chapter 16 for occupancies. Now this is an interesting one here because now we're going to have a place that we can now dump various occupancies in. Okay, not that it was not in chapter 5 before, right? So, but here it's just going to give it a new numbering system, okay? Nothing heartburn about. Now, check this out. Chapter 17, installations associated with bodies of water. Ironically enough, and I don't think this played a role in anything. I don't reckon. I don't know. I didn't ask. But code panel 17 is what deals with the swimming pools. However, this 17 is also going to be dealing with natural and artificially made bodies of water, which is no longer under code panel 17's purview. It's under 7 now. That just is new for this 2026 cycle. But look, they're putting everything nicely here. Marinas, everything. So you had 600, right? So let me show you here. So you had 680, and then you said 682, right? And then you had marinas and whatnot, and you could be dumped in 500 or chapter 5, 555. Well, now it's going to be nicely in installations associated with bodies of water. You're going to have marinas, boat yards, floating buildings. So it's no longer has to be in chapter 5. And then think about, okay, well, it's all going to be together now in chapter 17, okay? So let me get rid of these real quick. Okay, all right, next, power production and energy storage systems. So I know that folks are interested in that, all right? So interconnected systems, generators, standby. Notice how all of these now grouped together are about power production or energy storage, all now in one chapter. Rather than some of them up in 700, some of them in 400, well, chapter 4, some in chapter 7, some in chapter 6. Dude, think about this if this is your world. Everything now is being condensed so that if I'm dealing with generators, I'm going to go to chapter 18. If I'm dealing with standalone systems, like a PV standalone, I'm going to go in here, okay? If I'm dealing with PV systems or stationary standby batteries, I'm going to go right here now rather than having to remember, oh, I got to be in chapter 4. Oh, but now I got to be in chapter 6. Oh, but on this type of system, I got to be, for energy storage professionals, I got to be now over in 7. It's all going to be right here. Trust me, they're not doing this. I had somebody post something on one of my TikTok channels, and they said that NFPA is doing this just for money. Are you serious? They're trying to make this thing for the next 100 years, right? So yes, Daryl said he's going to, you don't have to, because if you're a fast track student, then you got electronic flashcards in our program, okay? Oh, by the way, I'd be remiss for anybody that wants to join Fast Tracks Tube. There's a discount coupon up at the top where we play all of our videos. That's a discount code, get you 50% off. Figured I'd mention that while I'm here. I had to do one little sales piece, didn't I? Okay. Right. Chapter 19. Life safety and emergency systems. All of those, check that out, folks. Everything now, instead of having to remember chapter 6 and chapter 7, all of them are now going to be in one. So we've got fire pumps, fire alarm systems, legally required, emergency systems, all of them, all dumped into here now, okay? So as you can see, this is the structure, the way it looks here, and we're going to rapidly change. We kind of went through all these, but what I want to do, let me go back down in size real quick right here. So what are the takeaways from this tonight? Okay. Just so you kind of see what's going on here. What are the takeaways? Well, these proposed changes is fluid and will continue to evolve as you receive input. Y'all can send input to Mr. Sargent. Mr. Sargent is a great guy. He is, we don't always see eye to eye, but I can tell you he is dedicated to this industry. I know him all the way back when I was working for NEMA, and I was doing a presentation with him together, and my father got ill. In fact, I thought we were going to lose him at that time. I was supposed to do a presentation with him. It wasn't fair that he had to do the whole thing. I had not lost a parent yet. I wasn't prepared. This is many years ago. And Jeff said, you go and do what you need to do. I got this. And he did the entire presentation, a couple hours, without my help. I was a basket case. You know, I was so close to my father. And at the end of the day, we didn't think he was going to make it. I couldn't get a flight back. And I'm just sitting there thinking, is my dad going to be dead by the time I get home? And Jeff looked at me and he says, don't worry about it. I got it. That's just one little thing. I mean, that's his job. He was there to teach with me, but I've never known Mr. Sargent to actively try to harm me. And I don't know, he may not like me. I don't know, but I've never seen him actively try to harm anybody. So he is very transparent. And I believe that if you have concerns with this structure, he will take that feedback. He will take that feedback, okay? Now, the intent is to print, right here, folks, this right here. The intent is to print the proposed structure in the annex for the 2026. That's why we're doing this right now, okay? Also, it is not going to have any impact on the technical data here. This is only a restructuring. Again, and the intent here is to move articles once and be done with it, okay? Get it right the first time. That's what the goal is here. Get it right the first time. And so that's why we need your input, okay? You need your input on it. So here's my deal, folks. Here's the deal. If you have suggestions, if you have recommendations, if you have anything that you think, you've looked at this structure briefly, please do me a favor. In the comments of this video, on whatever platform you're listening, please give your comments about what you think you should recommend. What should they do here? What should they do here? And I will send them to Mr. Sargent. I will see. If you know Mr. Sargent's email address, send them to him. He is more than willing to take your solicitation of information. All right? But I am here to do this live stream on all of my platform channels, okay? So that you can comment and I can collect those and get them to Mr. Sargent because you can be involved. And that's the reason I'm doing it. I love the NEC. I love this profession. I've given my whole life to it, 34 years. This is the first time in my life that I've seen a change to the NEC of this magnitude. And I want to be involved in it. I want to think that I had a part in the next structure of the NEC, okay? Maybe it's cliche, corny, I don't know. That's how I feel about it, wholeheartedly, okay? It's how I feel about it. So again, if anybody's got any questions on that, I know it was quick. I say quick because I think I don't know what the time is on this thing. I'm not monitoring the time. But if you've got any questions you want to ask, I think it's an hour and 20 minutes, so not too bad. If you have any questions you want to ask, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. If you want more information, I'll make sure that these 2 documents are available, not only on my blog, but I will try to add it to at least I will try to add links, at least in the comments, to the YouTube video channel. So if you're watching over on YouTube, or if you're not familiar with my YouTube channel, it's basically just youtube.com/master the NEC. And oh, by the way, on all of these social media platforms, if you see something that doesn't come from @master the NEC, then it ain't come from me. Because that's the only account that I'm going to post on any social media. It's my @master the NEC. If there's anybody else, please let me know. Okay, because I don't like people speaking for me. I'm outspoken enough. I'll speak my mind myself. I don't need anybody to help me. But I'm here to answer your questions. I wholeheartedly believe in this change now. I believe that we can tweak it. I've got my own ideas that I want to send to Jeff. I think that this is a major step in the right direction. And we're going to tweak it along the way to get it right. But we need your help. Okay? We definitely need your help. And not if you're on the 2017 and 2020, you're thinking, why do I have a say? You have a say. Okay? Or at least now I've made you aware of it, so you're a part of it. All of you that are on here, you have never in your lifetime seen a structural change like this. People say, well, in 2002, they did a structural change, or in 2008, they did a structural. No. They might have renumbered some stuff. They might have rewritten an article. That is not a structural change. As you saw earlier, this has not been done since 1937. And if you saw how this flow is, and think about how you do your work every day, to be able to go into a chapter and have everything that you need in there, and then when you go to another one, like under 1,000 volts, everything's in there. You might find that you're only working in 2 chapters now, where in the past, you might have had to jump in 6 different chapters, right? It's a move for the best, folks. And I would not, y'all know me. Y'all know me. If I was against it, I would be trashing it. And I now am behind it because I think it is the right thing to do. Okay? All right, folks. I appreciate you all. Thank you for putting through. If I have any haters on there, you endured me for almost an hour and 30 minutes. God bless you. Okay? Because I know that I have a tendency to rub some people the wrong way. Sometimes it's intentionally and sometimes it's not. So at the end of the day, I appreciate all of you. All of my students that joined me, I am immensely proud of all of you. Y'all are doing amazing things in our program. For those out there that aren't in our program, one sales moment. We just launched 2 new courses. We dropped the price, but we gave you more. We really did. The basic and the enhanced course that we just launched is the best that we've ever offered. Even better, in my opinion, than the black or the plus. And it's cheaper. Why? Because I'm always trying to find ways to bring things to you. And if you want to get some of the best video platforms in the world, go over to fasttrackstube.com and use that coupon code 50% off, 50 OFF, and you get it for half price for an entire year. I'd love to see you there. All right, folks, appreciate you. Thanks for joining me. Till next time, stay safe.